What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Chuck Nunface here, and today we're going to talk about this guy right here, the Spartan Harsey folder. In particular, this one, as you can see, it is spooky season. We have hit it into October, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead themed Sugar Skull edition that I've had for a couple of years now and has been the surviving SHF in my lineup. There was a time when I actually had about 5 of these at one time, and this is the one that survived, the eventual purge. I tend to do that. I tend to get a lot of a particular brand or a particular model or something like that, and I kind of pick the one that I want, and I sell or trade the others off, something like that. So this is the surviving SHF. So before we get too in depth, we'll go over some basic dimensions on it right here. It is not a small knife, so this knife is going to be sporting about a 4-inch blade on this guy with about a 3 3/4 inch cutting blade, 3.5 to 3/4 inch cutting blade. So it is not small at all. So it is a big boy with a handle equally to match 1, 2, 3, 4, and almost 5-inch handle, 4 3/4 inch handle right there. So it is a S45 VN when these were initially released by Spartan Blades. They were S35 VN, but they are now S45 VN. And as you can see right there, also the William W. Harsey. Bill Harsey is the designer of this knife. He is pretty much a legend in the knife designing world, tactical world, things like that, a lot of special forces stuff. So he is all over this, and his design cues, if you're familiar with Harsey's designs, his design cues are all over this knife. So definitely not small. So you've seen the size right there. It's about 5.8 ounces as well. So it's not light either. These TI scales are not milled at all. I don't know if you can see that there. See if you can get a little light in there, but they are not milled out in any way. All right, we'll do some size comparisons here. So we'll have the usual cadre of comparison suspects, comparison choices. So that'll be your Spyderco Stretch 2, kind of standing in for the PM2, which I don't own. And another Spyderco, the Native 5. As you can see there, much bigger than the Native 5. The Ontario Rat number 1. It's going to be bigger than the Rat number 1 as well, longer in blade and in handle. Let's see, about the same handle size, a little bit longer, but yeah. Anyway, there is the Chris Reeve Knives Large Sebenza 21. Okay, so it's going to be bigger than the large Sebenza 21, and kind of keep the 21 in mind because we're going to touch back on the relationship between Chris Reeve and Spartan Blades as well in a little bit. And let's see, here's a Emerson Knives A100 right there. So kind of in the same ballpark. It's going to be a little bit bigger than these knives, but you know, these knives are, it's on the larger side of carry knives. And last but certainly not least, we'll go ahead and take a look at the Hinderer Knives XM18. So it is going to be bigger than the XM18. It's going to be almost a full inch, 3/4 of an inch overall, bigger than the XM18 right there. So as I said, there is a relationship between Spartan Blades and Chris Reeve Knives. When Spartan Blades was getting into folders, they had done fixed blades for a while. When they were getting into folders, they wanted to really learn and kind of pick the brain of some of the best makers in the industry. And they ended up spending a lot of time with Chris Reeve Knives and learning a lot about their processes and their manufacturing processes and taking a lot of cues from them. So they're going to be on washers as well. The washers aren't the same. These are, the Chris Reeve Knives washers are very specialized. They're perforated to hold grease and things like that. These aren't. They're going to have a smaller washer on the lock side, the lock bar side, and a larger washer on the show side to kind of accommodate that cutout right there. But the action, you can tell where they got their action from. So Chris Reeve Knives has a very distinct hydraulic action, and the Spartan Harsey folder is very similar. Now, it's a little more flickable than, say, the 21 is, but it's more in line with, I would compare it to an Umnumzan or a Nkosi as far as how it feels with action as opposed to a 21. But there's definitely some design cues and some construction cues that they take from Chris Reeve Knives. One notable difference is they don't shoulder their hardware. Okay, so Chris Reeves knives, they are that hardware right there is self-tightening. It doesn't need any Loctite or anything like that, and it's milled out, counterbored, countersunk in there, and it's nestled into the liner or the scale itself. That's not the case with these. It's going to be flat on that, so they're not shouldered, and neither are the back spacers as well. So, when we're talking about that, the Hinderer knives are typically going to be shouldered. They got those barrel spacers right there, and you're going to have a little bit more structural support within the knife that for a hard use knife or something that's labeled hard use, you're kind of going to want. So it does give that up, at least on this iteration. So this knife is from late 2020, I believe, and this one is post Pineland Cutlery merger. All right, so when you look and you see the Spartan Blades logo right there, and you see a little triangle that's actually a pine tree, that's going to be the Pineland Cutlery partnership that happened in late 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Knives that are before that partnership won't have that little mark right there. So they may have changed things since then. They are changing, they are improving. You'll notice on newer models, they do something that's very similar. They do away with the internal, I believe if they've done away with it, I couldn't swear to it because I haven't seen one, but if you look right there, you're gonna see that over travel stop. You look between that little fellow's split in his face right there, you're gonna see that over travel stop. It's gonna be very, very similar to just a Hinderer over travel stop, but it's internal. So they may have done away with that. I couldn't swear to it because I don't have a brand new construction one in front of me. And they've done the same oversized pivot, external portion of the pivot on this, and so the lock bar can't go past that point right there. So I always thought that was cool. It's very similar to the because the pivot's going to stop it. So if you try to put it out, the pivot is big enough where it's going to stop it right there. I thought it was similar to I think Curtis F3. They do that with the spot pivot. They may not be the only company that does that, but I like simple, creative solutions to problems, and I definitely thought that was it. I like that. Thumb studs on this knife are great. Love the thumb studs on this. Certainly better than the Chris Reeve knife standard thumb studs, but that's a topic for another day. The jimping on this, it is aggressive. If you're not a fan of jimping, this is some aggressive jimping. I mean, you've got kind of more tame jimping right here on the stretch. You've got, this Hinderer jimping. Yeah, that's pretty aggressive, but I would say this is just a little bit more aggressive than that Hinderer jimping. So if you're not a fan of jimping, you're gonna have to beware because it is pretty. It's pretty obvious on this. Now, me, it's never bothered me one bit. I don't mind it. It doesn't dig into my hands. I don't see it as a problem, but or a real hot spot or anything like that. But your mileage may vary in all things. It is going to be ambidextrous. Well, at least in the sense for carry. Of course, you're going to have to still, disengage the lock with your left hand rather than with your right. So it's not true ambidextrous. But in any case, you can swap that pocket clip over. It does have that nice Spartan logo on the filler tab right there. Going into this is all done really well. Now, on its surface, this is pretty plain. So this is just kind of like a polished TI, front and back on the scales. And they do that laser etching, but all this black part right here is also laser etched in. All right, so they burn all that stuff out, all that TI out, and give it that texture. And then they put all that intricate laser work in there too. Now, it doesn't have any ano. But for production knife companies, if you look at their knives and their special offerings from Spartan Blades on an annual basis, and even the ones that they keep in the rotation, I don't think there's another company out there that does it quite as well as Spartan knives, the Spartan Blades. They do ano and laser work, I think, better than anybody else out there. They put the best detail in there. Their colors are the purest on their ano. There might be other guys that do it as well, but I think they are top tier when it comes to ano work and laser work on their knives. It's just really, I've never seen them messed up at all. This one isn't actually typically available everywhere, this particular version. It was a dealer exclusive for Action Concepts. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Action Concepts doesn't sell anywhere other than eBay. They've got an eBay store, and that's the only place they sell. They're based out of Austin. I don't know if I've driven past the warehouse in Austin, but I don't know if it's something that you can go in and actually stop by. I mean, we were on the highway. My wife and I were on the highway, and I remember seeing it on the side of the road. Not the side of the road, but I remember seeing it from the highway, Action Concepts. And going, oh, all right, they do knives, and they have a storefront on eBay and everything else, and they have an exclusive Spartan Harsey folder. So this was the Action Concepts exclusive. It is a little different. If you're still watching after 10 minutes, it's kind of cool. It is a little bit different. It initially came with this blade right here, this S45 blade. However, I always thought it would be really cool because this knife with the silver scales, the black laser engraving, and the black hardware, I always thought a black blade would look better on this than the standard blade. I always thought it would look better. And on Blade Forums, another guy who had a Spartan, an SHF, he put a Damascus blade in his. And I just reached out to him and said, hey, what are you going to do? He had an black oxide blade or DLC or whatever it is. And I said, hey, what are you going to do with your black blade? He says, I don't know. It's just kind of sitting around now. I was like, well, what do you want for it? And he sold it to me like, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks, something like that. He sold it to me pretty cheap, and I ended up just buying it from him. And yeah, so now I think I have, in my opinion, the coolest Spartan Harsey folder out there. In my opinion, I have seen a couple other of these on Instagram, but they haven't been this configuration exactly. I've seen them with black blade but silver hardware, but I've never seen black blade and black hardware on this. You may notice too, one thing that I think Spartan Harsey folder owners are about 50-50 on is the lack of a choil on the stock blade. Now, William Harsey does it. He has his reasons. He doesn't put choils on any of them. I imagine it's going to be for the smoothness in the cuts and not having your blade get hung up on anything, but you are, when you sharpen it, you are going to, start to get a smile on there. The way I do it is I kind of like just do the stones a little bit here, and then I bring it up the blade, and I just do very light, almost, it's not going to be sharpened right there. I mean, it's sharp, but it's not sharpened. And I just do it that way. At some point, I don't know, I may end up having to put a choil on this. We'll see. But I did a choil on this one. It's not a very deep one. You can certainly do it a little bit lower or make it a little deeper, however you want to do it. Kind of up to you, but of course, anytime you modify a blade, you do so at your own risk. Take the responsibility. If you booger it up, it's kind of on you. So in any case, I've gone about as long as I think I need to go with this guy. Glad I finally got to this one. I was surprised I hadn't done a review on this knife yet. It is a top 5 knife for me, top 5 all time. I will always, unless I absolutely have to sell everything, I will always have a SHF in my collection, at least one, and probably this one, because this is just, of the ones that I've had, this is definitely my favorite so far. If you haven't done so already, I certainly would appreciate it if you could go ahead and click that button in the corner and subscribe to the channel. It would definitely help me out a lot. Keep me motivated to get more content out there. If people are definitely interested in seeing it, that always is a good thing. Leave a comment. Go ahead and like the video if you enjoyed it. If you leave a comment, any sort of questions that you have about Spartan, or what do you think of Spartan Harsey folder or any of their knives, or just anything in general knife related, be happy to address those questions and kind of just go back and forth through there. Give me a follow on Instagram at Chuck_Nunface. Lots more daily content there. And you know what? That is going to do it, folks. Peace out. I am done.